What if I told you the Stoics had a name for the perfect human being? Not a god, not a myth, a person. A real possible person, made of the same stuff you and I are made of, who figured out how to live so completely, so correctly that nothing the world threw at them could shake them. Not poverty, not illness, not disgrace, not even death. The Stoics call this person the Sage. And here's the thing that makes this really strange. When pressed on whether this person had actually existed, the Stoics thought long and hard about it and said, maybe once, possibly twice, in all of recorded human history. So why would a philosophy built for real people with real problems in the real world centre itself on an ideal that almost nobody had ever reached? That's exactly what we're going to get into today. And by the end of this episode, I think you'll find that an almost unreachable ideal might be one of the most practically useful things that this entire series has given you. Welcome back to the Stoic Mind Mechanic. I'm Tim Howell. 6 episodes, 6 big ideas. Preferred indifference, living according to nature, cosmopolitanism, the theory of emotion, fate and free will. We built the foundation brick by brick across the whole of the principles block. Today we're going to bring it all together in the single figure the Stoic tradition created to hold every one of those ideas at once, the Sage. This episode is the synthesis or the coming together of all of those. And by the end of it, you'll see how every concept we've covered fits into a single coherent picture of what Stoicism is actually trying to do. And then we'll tackle the question you're probably asking yourself. If the Sage is essentially unachievable, what's the point? Well, I'm going to tell you now, and the answer is better than you might expect. The Stoics describe the Sage in paradoxes, deliberately extreme formulations, not meant to be taken literally, but designed to make a clear point about the differences between the Sage and the rest of us. They said the Sage alone is free, while everyone else is a slave. The Sage alone is rich, while everyone else is poor. The Sage alone is beautiful, while everyone else is ugly. The Sage alone is a king, while everyone else is a subject. These aren't claims about external circumstances. A Sage can be broke, enslaved, sick, socially invisible. The paradoxes point inward to the only kind of freedom, wealth, beauty and power the Stoics considered genuinely real. Let me build a picture more specifically, drawing on everything we've covered in this block of episodes. The Sage holds all external things as preferred indifferents, pursued reasonably, held lightly, letting go of them without bitterness when they go. Health, wealth, reputation, the people they love, none of these are the foundation of their well-being. They can lose any or all of them, yet remain completely themselves. The Sage lives fully according to nature, exercising reason in alignment with the Logos, social obligations fully expressed, inhabiting their individual roles with complete integrity. There is no gap between what they know to be right and what they actually do. The inner consistency the Stoics called homologia is complete. The Sage extends moral concern to every rational being without exception, the cosmopolitan ideal fully lived. A stranger's suffering means something to them. Nothing human is alien. The Sage has only eupatheia, the good emotions, and none of the pathe. They feel joy from what is genuinely good. They feel caution from what genuinely merits it. They feel genuine wish for what is genuinely worth wanting. They don't experience the turbulent, distorting passions that arise from false beliefs, because they hold no false beliefs about what's genuinely good or genuinely evil. The Sage is free in the Stoic sense. Their response is fully expressed, their own rational nature, without being distorted by external pressure or unexamined impulses. In Chrysippus's terms, they are the cylinder rolling perfectly in accordance with its own nature, not because the push has been removed, but because the cylinder itself is perfect. The Stoic paradoxes about the sage were famous in the ancient world, famous enough that Cicero wrote an entire work about them called Paradoxa Stoicorum. They were widely mocked by critics of the school, and they were defended with great sophistication by the Stoics themselves. The critics said, "This is absurd. You're claiming a slave can be freer than an emperor, that a pauper can be richer than a millionaire, that a social outcast can be more truly beautiful than a celebrated aristocrat. These things are obviously false." The Stoic response was the same distinction we've been building throughout the series between external conditions and internal ones. What's generally good, what is merely preferred. The slave who is philosophically free, in the sense of being fully governed by their own reason rather than by unexamined impulse or external pressure, is freer in the only sense that matters philosophically than the emperor whose every decision is driven by fear, vanity, or desire he's never once examined. The paradoxes were designed to shake listeners out of their assumptions about value, to make the category of genuine goodness vivid by expressing it in extreme contrast with what the world usually calls goodness. A philosophical provocation, not as literal description. Epictetus understood this. He claimed to be a practitioner, a person always in the process of becoming a sage without achieving it. His teaching wasn't, "This is what I am," it was, "This is what we are aiming for." The distance between here and the horizon tells us how much the practice still has to offer. He said, "Never call yourself a philosopher, and don't talk a great deal among the unlearned about philosophical principles, but act on those principles. Thus, at a banquet, don't say how one ought to eat, but eat as you ought." Of all the Stoic writers, Seneca is the most honest about the gap between the sage and the practitioner. He makes no pretense of having achieved such a status. In letter 57, he describes flinching when a tunnel suddenly goes dark, the pre-passion he couldn't prevent, the bodily reaction that arrived before philosophy had time to engage. He makes the point that the vast majority of Stoic practitioners are not sages, but what the Stoics called prokoptons, people making progress, people who are closer to the sage than the average person, but still some way short. He writes to Lucilius in letter 6, when he says, "I am still far from being a tolerable person, let alone a perfect one. There is no great harm in admitting this. It is the condition of all who are making progress. The question is not whether you have arrived, but whether you are moving in the right direction." Whether you are moving in the right direction. That's the operative question. Not, have I reached the sage? Not, am I closer than yesterday? But are you oriented? Is the horizon in view? Is the practice continuing? Progress isn't smooth. It doesn't mean advancing steadily towards the sage's perfection in a smooth upward curve. Progress is messy. It involves insight, regression, renewed effort, the discovery of new areas of failure you didn't even know you had, and then the occasional breakthrough that changes the quality of everything. From the inside, it feels more like the meditations, reminders written again and again, the same failures noted and returned to, more like that than a clean, smooth ascent. The practitioner is not the sage. The practitioner is the prokoptôn, the one making progress. Progress is real, non-linear, never complete, and always worth continuing. So if the ideal is essentially unattainable, why bother? Isn't it just a moving goalpost, a guarantee you'll always fall short? Isn't it just a recipe for perpetual dissatisfaction? The answer is in understanding what an ideal is actually for. Think about how sailors have navigated for thousands of years. Polaris, the North Star, sits almost directly above the Earth's axis and appears fixed in the sky. A sailor navigating by Polaris is not trying to reach it. They know with complete certainty they never will. That impossibility is not a problem. The star's function isn't to be a destination, it's to be a reference point. A fixed orientation in a world of darkness, shifting currents and changing weather. So the sage is Polaris, the practitioner is the sailor, and the philosophical life is the voyage. So you navigate by the sage not to arrive, but to know in which direction to travel. Every decision, every moral question, every moment that asks what the best version of you would do, all of it navigated by the same reference point. What would a person of complete wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance do here? How would someone who held all external things as preferred indifferents respond to this loss? How would somebody with genuine cosmopolitan concern treat this difficult person in front of them right now? The questions are answerable. The standard is clear. The navigation is possible. The destination is not the point. And there's one more function the sage serves, perhaps the most important. The existence of the ideal makes the aspiration to excellence imaginable. It gives the practice a direction. Without it, Stoicism collapses into a collection of coping techniques, useful maybe, but without the deeper aspiration that gives those techniques their real justification. The sage is what makes Stoicism a philosophy of flourishing rather than a philosophy of endurance. Not how do I survive what life throws at me, but what does the fullest expression of a human life actually look like? And how do I build toward it day by day, imperfectly, without illusion, for as long as I live? I want to take a moment to draw the thread that runs from the very beginning of this series all the way to this point, because seeing the whole journey through the eyes of the sage changes how every earlier episode fits together. We began with Zeno, a merchant on a beach, stripped of everything external, confronting the question of what remained. That shipwreck was the accidental version of the voluntary discomfort Seneca later recommended as a deliberate practice. What Zeno discovered on that beach was the beginning of an answer to a question: what is genuinely mine? We followed that question through the Stoic school, through Cleanthes' water-hauling perseverance and Chrysippus's intellectual architecture, Panetius's practical translation across the Mediterranean to Rome, and into the lives of three extraordinary human beings who were none of them sages, but were all practitioners of extraordinary commitment. Seneca, brilliant, compromised, honest about his failures to the very last breath that he took in the Roman bath. Epictetus, stripped of every external circumstance, discovering the only freedom worth having was the one that no one could take. And Marcus, the most powerful man in the world, writing reminders to himself in a private notebook, because without the writing, the philosophy wouldn't hold. None of them were sages. All of them were prokoptons, people making progress. All of them were navigating by the same star. Then we built the system virtue as the only genuine good. The four cardinal virtues unified in a single excellence, preferred indifference held appropriately, life lived according to nature at every level, cosmopolitan concern extended without limits, emotion understood at its cognitive root, fate embraced without bitterness and with full engagement. Each of these principles in the sage is fully realized, not partially, not approximately, not with the inconsistencies that mark every normal human life, but fully, completely, with no grey areas. That's why the sage is the synthesis of everything. Every thread of the philosophy comes together in the image of what it would look like for a human being to live completely in accordance with what they are. I want to close this episode and this whole block of the series with a passage from Marcus Aurelius that I keep coming back to. He's not writing about the sage, not about perfection. He's writing about the practice of a person who knows exactly how far he is from any ideal, and he chooses to continue anyway when he says, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? I have to go to work as a human being, not as a sage, not as someone who has achieved philosophical perfection, as a human being with all the imperfections, inconsistencies, and distance from the ideal that comes with that. But going to work every day as the specific person you are, with the character you've built so far, in the circumstances you actually inhabit, navigating by the star, not arriving, navigating." Your reflection for this episode and for the principles block as a whole: which of the 6 ideas that we've explored, preferred indifference, living according to nature, cosmopolitanism, the theory of emotion, fate and free will, or the sage as horizon, has had the most personal impact? Not the most interesting intellectually, the most consequential, the one that, if you actually live by it, would change the most. Hold on to that question. It's the beginning of the next phase of the work, because this series continues. The principles block is now complete, but there's a great deal more to come. We'll go deep into Stoicism in a modern world, in leadership, in sport, in grief, in anxiety, relationships, in creativity, in the great questions of living well in the 21st century. We'll meet the modern thinkers who've carried the tradition forward. We'll explore the science that's backed up the philosophy, and we'll build episode by episode the fullest and most honest account of Stoicism we can. But all of it is still in service of the same horizon we've been navigating since video 1. If this series has given you something real, something you've actually used, please like, subscribe and share it with someone who might need it. That's how this channel grows and how those ideas reach the people who are looking for them. I'm genuinely grateful that you're here. So keep calm, keep stoic, and I'll see you in the next one.